I have so many more questions about the Bridge Home, but while we're talking a little bit about spirituality, this is a book that's very much religiously themed. Viji is our narrator, is exceedingly practical, exceedingly determined and disciplined. She what's the word I'm looking for? She reminds me of you, which I'm sure is not a coincidence, and that she is very, very practically minded, very focused, and she is, or at least she presents as an atheist early in the story. She gives us her thought about the gods that people are worshiping, and then they ultimately thought about Jesus and the switch there to Western religion. And before we talk about, well, she's that way, but then there's also another character in the story, Arul. But I'm so sorry, am I pronouncing the name right?
Arul, yeah.
Arul, there we go. And Arul has had an experience, without spoiling, he lost his family in a very tragic way. And so something that broke my heart is that he has held on to these beliefs that he's gained from a missionary, that he's yearning in some ways for death, because as soon as he dies, he gets to go up to heaven and be back with his family. So his approach to life seems, if I'm interpreting correctly, and I'm probably not, but it seems to be a little bit of, okay, well, if we continue to survive, great. If we die, even better, because then I'll be in heaven sooner. And so much of the novel is centered around some of the conversations back and forth between these two and some other events that come and kind of shape an argument in one way or another about religion. So I just wanted to ask you, just in general terms, when you're talking about religion for the middle grade market, for young impressionable readers of diverse backgrounds that are going to come to this, what responsibilities do you have when discussing religion? What is the best way to talk about religion and spirituality with younger readers?
I think one thing that, it's funny to hear you say that it's religious. I didn't think about the religion at all, actually, when I was writing the novel. In fact, when I finished it, I thought it was the one novel that didn't have that very much, which is odd, I know, because with the others, I think I felt that it was there. And I realized later that, of course, it was that. It's something that I think is part of my life. It's part of my experience. It's something that I think about. And so it plays a part in my novels. And also, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of, well, I'm afraid of some things. But there's a lot that I'm not that afraid of. I've had several experiences that have taught me to test the limits of my fear as well. And I think one of the things I certainly am not afraid of is discussing religion openly. And I am very open, I think, about religion as well. And I wanted to, I see in retrospect, this is me speaking, I think that after having written A Time to Dance, which is about a young girl seeing spirituality through the lens of Hinduism, and I do think of every religion as just that, as a lens that you see the world through, and no more than that. And I think the truth, whatever it is that the characters in the Bridge Home argue about, doesn't change. And yes, you have Viji, who is just vehemently opposed to the idea of God or a higher power or a higher being of any sort in any religion. And you have Arul, who is firmly convinced of the Christian view that he has been given, the Christian view that he has grown up with. And each of them remains strong. And I think that's very important, that they don't convert each other, that they don't ever try to, a little bit maybe, but they don't actually ever succeed in pulling that person one way or the other. What they do come to is an understanding of one another's views and a respect of one another's views. And that love that they have for each other holds despite that difference. And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of when you write about religion. If you were going to come down forcefully and try to shove a religion down any person's throat, especially a middle grade reader, I think you need to be very, very careful. Because I think a church or a synagogue or a temple or a mosque may be a place for an adult to expound on their religious views. I don't think a book is a place for an adult to do that. I don't think an author, especially an author for young people, has a responsibility, I do think, to refrain from sermonizing. We are not people who give sermons. We should not be people who give sermons. I don't believe that authors should try to educate or to, God forbid, here I am saying God forbid, convert someone, or try to actively change their religious views. I don't think that's our place. I don't think we should. And so I think if you are going to look at religion or handle religion in any way in your novel, it has to be done with a lot of sensitivity, a lot of understanding, and a deeply sincere respect of the equality of the absolute right for someone else to have a different point of view. And I think if it doesn't come from that place of really sincere acceptance, that's not a great idea to put then religion in your novel. If you aren't completely accepting of other people's worldviews, then you need to be very careful what you say and don't say, because the last thing you want is for your novel to become a sermon. The last thing you want is for your novel to be some sort of proselytization tool. And to me, the way that I saw Arul, the way that I saw Muthu and Viji and Ruku, there were children who went through those sorts of horrible things that I had met. And some of them many of them came out with these very diametrically opposed views. Some felt firmly, deeply, even more so than before, that their religion was something that gave them strength and solace. And some said, no. And, so you see that. And I think it's quite common that if you go through a very difficult experience, you end up on one of those extreme ends of the spectrum.
That makes sense. I was particularly struck by a passage, I'd have to pull it up here, but at one point they come across some worms that have come up after a rain, and then the worms are struggling and kind of pathetic, and there's no food available for them. They're trying to get back to where they can find some food, and I think it's our rule that has the revelation that maybe we're God's worms, or maybe it's not.
Muthu says that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Muku said that, and Muku says that makes sense. That we're God's worms. God must be so big and have other concerns that He can't worry about us, the little worms, which really stuck with me. I don't know if there's a question in there. I just wanted to tell you I like your book.
Yeah, the interesting thing that some people have asked me why it was Christianity that Arul was, why is Arul a member of the Christian faith? And I think that people see it as Western, and it's not. And I mean, I'm the last person that would cater to an audience like that. I think it's very important for me in my own self to understand different religions. It always has been. And I think Christianity is part of the Indian experience. It's part of the South Asian experience. Actually, the earliest Christians were, or some of the earliest Christians anyway, maybe not all of them, were in India. So India has had Christianity and Christians from way back when. We actually believe that one of the apostles came to India. And so the first Indian Christians were happy practicing their religion when in Europe there were no Christians, or the few Christians that there were being persecuted. And so I think that's something that people don't understand. And some of the Indian Christians are extremely proud of that heritage. They're not converts, and they're not, recent converts. They've had that religion for for centuries. And so there is that religious tradition in India. So that's something that's important. There's certainly other ways to think of other facets. There was this person, Sister Catherine, who worked with fisher folk when I was in India. Somebody else that my mother had actually worked with for a while in our lives. And she, there are scenes near the beach where they see these shacks and so on. And Sister Catherine was there helping the children who went fishing every day. And I think, that had an impact on me as well. And it was it's certainly a tradition that I'm exposed to every day living in this country. When I grew up, my last 2 years of school were in a Catholic school. My years of doing my bachelor's degree was at a Catholic institution as well. So there's that, and my husband has a Christian background too. So it's not, it's a religion that certainly I have a lot not only of familiarity but also a great deal of knowledge about, and I think a lot of um, uh, a substantial experience of. Does that make?
It does.
Yeah.
I don't hear you very clearly. In fact, something I wanted to make sure I ask you, because I feel it's not something I ask every guest, but something that's fair game. I asked Kathy Appelt when we were talking about her book, Angel Thieves, which is also somewhat religiously themed. And I've got a post that will be going live at middlegradeninja.com here the week of Easter. It'll be called Thoughts on God, in which I've had enough emails about my religiously themed books, the Book of David and the zombie stories. I'm not yet comfortable enough discussing religion in middle grade, so neither of the Bannekers features anything religiously oriented. But I have talked about it in horror novels, because I don't know how you do a horror story in Indiana without at some point somebody talking about their religious thoughts. So I'll start. I believe I've gone back and forth. I have a very religious upbringing. I stepped away from that and went full atheist for a minute, but I've had these experiences in my life that I can't, as much as I'd like to, I can't discount, where I very much felt some form of divine intervention, and I have to factor that into my worldview. So I am a begrudging believer in that I would like to sound as smart as Christopher Hitchens, and I don't, and I'm aware of that. Because of those experiences I've had. And I feel it's fair game, when you've discussed religion openly as you have, to ask, what are your views on spirituality, at least at this point, because I know that's an ever-evolving subject.
I think that there's a very beautiful, actually it's a Hindu prayer that many of us know. I think that sums up my views on religion, really, and spirituality. It says every human being, every soul, and there's a scientist side of me, and there are certainly many scientist friends I have, and they say, some of them say to me, if you have a belief in a soul, then you're not really a scientist, in which case that it is what it is. But I do believe that there is something beyond the physical body that we have that makes us alive. And I love this poem that says each soul is like a river that takes its own path to the one big ocean. And I love that, because I really think of it that way. I think that every human being, no matter what religion you might be in, no matter what religious view you may have, or how you may decide to go toward it or away from it, whatever the meanderings are that that your soul takes, at the end of the day, we all go to that one same place. And to me, that is an ocean of compassion that we all end up in. We may have different names for it, but to me, those are names. Those try to describe that which cannot be described.
So you believe there's something greater, but are perhaps not comfortable at this time defining the absolutes of what that may or may not be? Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. And I do think that with the understanding that everybody has a different idea and a different path, and that people may disagree, I do think that each person has their own evolution, their own way to get to that place, and that all paths are ultimately going to the same place. There's no point. I don't know. I mean, I don't really buy into inequality. I don't like it terribly when people think that they're better off than someone else for any reason, including the religion that they subscribe to. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. So what do you think happens when we die, or do you have a thought on the subject?
I don't know, but I hope we come back, and I hope that whole theory of like Indian coming back for different lives, I would love for that to be true. I'd come back as a writer every time.
I don't know that I would. I'm having a very good time this time around, but maybe next time I want to try something else. We'll see.